Thank you to all of you for coming out. This is an incredibly important study that we're releasing today, and for a number of reasons. I think that many of you have seen or paid attention to the post-Katrina rebuilding effort, where we've had a large number of apartment complexes and housing units put back into commerce. What's essential as we do this is that we have to make sure that housing is available for every single person in our great city. What we find in this study is ultimately that that's not the case. We found that properties that are required to be accessible for people with disabilities oftentimes don't meet the minimum requirements necessary.
The Greater New Orleans area has not achieved equal housing opportunity for people with physical disabilities. The Access Denied report documents, describes, and quantifies accessibility barriers which amount to discrimination against people with disabilities in rental housing. This examination investigated 22 apartment complexes in the Greater New Orleans area. All of the units, all of the complexes examined were completed construction within the last 5 years. An overview of the finding presents a grim picture. 100% of the complexes examined failed to comply with at least one of the 7 design and construction standards, and over 80% of the complexes failed to comply with 2 or more of the 7. On average, the complexes examined failed to comply with 3 of the 7 design and construction standards. The Access Denied report clearly finds insufficient compliance with the Fair Housing Act's design and construction standards. First, the Louisiana Housing Finance Agency should institute mandatory training on the Fair Housing Act's accessibility requirements involving all applicants for housing financing assistance, including tax credits and grant awards. Second, state and local elected officials should review the state building code to ensure that it is fully and completely consistent with the Fair Housing Act. Third, the Louisiana Architects Association should institute mandatory training on the Fair Housing Act's accessibility requirements for its membership. Fourth, the City of New Orleans and other area municipalities should institute a policy where local building code officials distribute information about mandatory compliance with the Fair Housing Act's accessibility requirements every time a building permit is issued to develop a project with 4 or more units. Fifth, considering the lack of accessible housing in New Orleans, the city and parish governments in the region should fund modifications to units built before March of 1991 to make them accessible for people with disabilities. Sixth, the City of New Orleans and other municipalities in the region should train people with disabilities and advocates about how to identify violations of the Fair Housing Act's design and construction standards in order to ensure ongoing monitoring. And finally, local lenders should require assurances of full and complete compliance with the Fair Housing Act's design and construction standards as a part of their loan approval process for multifamily financing.
Over the last several decades, the population of people with mobility impairments, especially, has grown in this country. New Orleans has always had a critical need for accessible, affordable housing. Post-Katrina, that need is even greater. If people are going to live at the community level independently, then they must have accessible housing.
The reason that we're doing this release of this information right now is because it's a critical moment in the rebuilding of New Orleans. There's a lot of multifamily development that's slated to come online. And this is an effort to raise awareness about the issue and about full compliance with the accessibility standards.